All right, welcome all of you, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit some poetry. It's not always everybody's favorite thing to do, but much gratitude from me to you. So I'm going to start with a poem that I would like to dedicate to my platonic soulmate, Kristen Bowden, who inspired a line from this poem. And it is, let me switch, there we go. Okay. It is called Under Construction, and it is about a real event in which I did accidentally walk into an unfinished elevator shaft. It sounds like a much bigger deal than it was. Really, I just fell into a muddy hole. That's all that happened. But without further ado, Under Construction. When I was 12, I walked into an unfinished elevator shaft, a lipless mouth hollowed out of mud and mortar. It was nothing more than a man-made gorge, a half-built cavity in what would one day be a Methodist church sanctuary. 3 years later, I watched my older sister float face up, eyes closed, against a sky that wrapped itself around our neighbor's pool. And I believed her when she said, if you really want to die, just stop. Your body knows when to quit. Still, there's something we living will never know. Dying is a tricky business and not as simple as it seems. Where were you when you realized you didn't need to believe in anything? I never told you this, but often I dream a darkness mistaken for a doorway, muddy water only inches deep beneath my palms, uncanny. People so often describe their pain as water. Waves, we say, it comes in waves. But what I recall has nothing to do with hurt. I had wanted to walk the cold concrete hallways, to touch each twisted nail and listen for the sound my body made as it moved inside a thing unfinished. Don't we all want to see a place before it's meant to be seen? Loose scraps of sheetrock and slag, blank spaces without doorknobs or window panes, new hinges with nothing to hold. Do not speak to me about some dull and distant magic found only inside the incomplete. Don't point at strands of shoreline and say, these days they bring in sand from other places. I don't want to know how much of this earth was once an ocean. Everything we know comes from somewhere else. And one day I'll search for your face and find you blurry and remote. If given time, water will work its way through any surface. Consider every accident an attribute, every scar a mark of union, a trace existence of other, leftovers of a particular something else. What changes when we say serious, when we say only, minor? How is it possible to choose a contingency for the unintentional? For you, I said just. It was just an accident. But still, my body meant its steps. I think maybe all we need to walk off the edge of the earth is a belief that it isn't the end of things. We talk of consciousness as if it were a ditch humanity had carved for itself. Slipped in and out, we say, as if behind the skull the mind could stumble over its own terrain. Here's the truth of it. How I know you has nothing to do with my childhood. I would be charity. I would loveth all things, beareth all things, even unto the vanishing point of your shoulders, if only it were possible for one human to be useful to another. At the end of his trials, God commanded Job to bathe in cold water and be clean. So much of us is accidental. I think maybe I could die from this. Okay. So the next poem that I am going to read is called Placeholders. Well, it's called Placeholders for a Father Found During His Mother's Funeral. So Placeholders for a Father Found During His Mother's Funeral. How else to explain those hands? How he sits in the pew just a little too neatly. Something sudden and secret about those arms and legs, about the body that pulled my body forth from nothing, or maybe assuming there is a God and religion really does mean return from wherever God hides us before we enter here. He is noticeable in his stillness. I imagine his arm lifted, the space of his hand, a cradle supporting our cordless phone, as it does every December when he calls to tell me Rudolph is on PBS. Where do we say we are from once our parents have died? I save their voicemails. Almost out of storage, I delete photos and apps so I can keep on saving their voices. Year after year on record, all the sound aging makes stored on some unseen bit of plastic machinery like a personal cyber audio scrapbook. My father has always loved history books. Sitting with him at the kitchen table after dinner, I learned how to draw the letters that made my name. Historians, he said, are the memory of the world. He pressed my fingers to the pencil, made his hand a cast so mine would have a mold in which to fit. Told me they are responsible for writing it all down. Before the service, we walked up to the body single file. We covered her hands and kissed her forehead, but we moved no part of her, this woman, the loss of whom I would never really feel. For a long time, I could have said no one I've known has died. But then I saw the two boys I'd grown up with become fatherless, both dads dead by the time we took the SATs, both having gotten the cancer and both having lived a few months longer than expected. I used to watch their profiles in biology, wait for echoes, wait for shades. Then we grew up and went to school. And Derek became a doctor while Paul went crazy, lost his mind in that way where you don't come back. Now, if I think of the body as a house, it is almost possible to understand how no one might be home, how everything has to be held in place by something outside of itself. Other things happened the year of mine and my brother's car accident. For months before she went to sleep and woke up without breasts, my mother drove herself to the hospital and laid shirtless on a metal table under an invisible curtain of radiation. I don't know how many times or for how long. They were trying to kill that part of her that didn't know it was killing itself. My father was never there. When I was older, she showed me how the doctors had marked these places, had left behind a series of small black targets. How to admit it, that the human body can be our greatest humiliation. And knowing that, how then are we supposed to allow someone else to enter? When I imagine being a parent, I think of skin grafts. I think of my mother ordering a surgeon to take from her whatever my legs needed. I think of my father carrying me up the stairs when I was too sleepy to walk. And I know that I do not understand what grief or sadness really feels like. I have two more poems that I might run out of time. I will go ahead and switch to the last one. Or maybe I'll do prescriptions. Apologies. It's always hard to time these things. Y'all understand. We're all on the same page here.
Don't worry about it, Sam. If you need a few more minutes, go for both.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, this one is called Prescriptions for Pediatric Survival. And I have to say thank you to Jamaica Kincaid's poem Girl for inspiring this. Prescriptions for Pediatric Survival. Watch television in the morning, but wait until afternoon to use crayons. Watch cartoons. Devote everything you have to the sandlot. Be careful with sunlight. You should never imagine the weight of a broken-in baseball, should never think of tree houses or flashlight. Twice a week you will dream of running. Learn to expect this. The unavoidables. Bedpans and glossy cardstock. The 4th grade class of Hardin Park Elementary is thinking about you. That uncle who took you dove hunting wants you to get well soon. On the 2nd day of the 3rd week, use the beige phone with the bright numbers to call your best friend. Talk to him for 12 minutes. Do not be surprised when nothing changes. In your grief, don't dwell on the privacy of bathrooms. Don't stare out the window. Devote everything you have to every wild card in every hand you are dealt. There will be many games of Uno in this place. Don't forget to thank the nurse with the gentle hands and the white hair when she brings you a spoonful of water. Someone with cold hands and a bowl of water will wallpaper your right leg in cotton and plaster, layer after layer until the shell hardens. Don't worry about not feeling this. When the pediatric orthopedist sweeps in to check on your bones, he will not look at your face. Be sure you don't hit him with your plaster-heavy leg. That way, you won't disturb the Uno cards stacked at the foot of the bed. Pay attention to the insightful minister. Later, your mother will tell you that he drove 2 hours to see you and you refused to say a word. You should feel guilty. You should thank the spoonful of water for being so wet and cold. You should thank your mother for eating her solid food in the bathroom with the door closed so you don't have to smell what your body can't absorb. Breathe. Breathe again. Don't close your eyes too often or for too long. Try to listen to the pediatric orthopedist when he swings by your room to poke at your ribs. Do not kick him in his handsome as the world turns face. Don't expect anyone to look you square in the eye. It will hurt often. It's okay to consider jumping out the window, but it's not okay to tell anyone. You should never hurt in front of your mother. The hurting here is very contagious. This is how to breathe while the nurse with the not so gentle hands scrubs the gasoline out of your scalp. This is how to pretend you're asleep when the night nurse comes in to check your vitals. This is how to pretend you don't feel it when the intern touches the big toe of your right foot. This is how to pretend you don't feel it when the not so gentle nurse changes your broken IV. Later, you'll need to know how to explain it to your friends so that it seems funny. This is the time for gag reflexes and vomit stories. This is the right time for Jell-O on the bathroom floor. You'll need to laugh when they laugh. You'll need to keep yourself from staring out the window. Remember that cancer girl from across the hall? She knew how to stare out the window without arousing suspicion. Try and make your face like her face. This is how to cultivate avoidance behaviors, how to circumvent the kicking of that pediatric orthopedist who you want to kick so badly. This is how to tell the truth, how to unlearn, omit, ignore, overlook. This is how to believe in the grace which passeth understanding. Never forget, this isn't where you live. Never sleep with both eyes closed, and never let yourself die. Your mother will never forgive you for it. I have one more. Is that okay, Diane, or should I go on?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
All right, one more. So this one is called Taxonomy of an Automobile Accident. Taxonomy of an automobile accident. I do not remember being baptized, but I know it happened. It makes perfect sense. All the water and the saving. Most everything you see isn't what you think it is. I was in the 7th grade when a science teacher explained glass isn't a solid. Its pieces are too far apart. This is why old windows sink into their frames, why water can swallow you, can rearrange its parts and fit you inside. All these things that we learn, I don't know what to do with them. If this window is really just a slow-moving liquid, then why won't it let me in? I'm pressing, but all I feel is the cold surface. It's 42 degrees at 12:04 a.m. A hypertrophic scar will heal with an excess of tissue. An atrophic scar will form a sunken recess in the skin. This is what happens when the supporting structures are lost. Think of drowning, walking pneumonia. If you knew every language, would you have a word for it? A sound for it? If the scar is the epilogue, what is the wound? What is the 7-letter word for to name? I'm afraid that everything I don't know how to say will gather and gape like this. An injury does not become a scar until the wound has healed. If I could, I'd call it a deepening, a parking deck full of wind. I'd call it unfixable. I'd call it hollow. Think of a field full of snow. Think of the static glow on the downstairs television. Every light is a house, is a holder, is a person, and how many hands am I not holding right now? I've touched 1,000 windows and they all feel the same. In kindergarten, they teach you not to write letters from the bottom up. You're supposed to start at the top and drag the ink down. My older sister says there are 2 ways to draw a face. Either you start with the eyes and the mouth, or you start with an outline, a jaw, and some hair. In one version, there is a white space waiting to be finished. There are things that do not grow back. To mend the damage, a scar wall blocks off cell communication. This is where I don't sweat, don't grow hair, don't notice your palm pressed. Skin scars occur when the dermis, that deep, thick layer of skin, is damaged. This is the missing nerve. Think of a broken faucet, a loose doorknob, a picture frame without a picture. I am convinced everything has a place inside of it, a space meant to hold something else. Think of an old stable, one where the wood's been drenched in horseflank and feed. My older sister was one of those blue-eyed, sullen girls, the sort who seemed to belong with horses. She got paid to sweep the stalls and came home after dinner full of the smell. Once she told me she'd had this dream where she was riding in the car with me and James. It was after the accident, but we were all in the Scout. I saw a cloud of dust and then the tree. If I'm quiet enough, I can almost hear it. I've seen the pictures. I know what happened. A skin scar will leave a trace of the original injury, but it didn't feel sudden. People talk a lot, but not about some things. It felt like an airport terminal, like waiting for your name to be called in class. If I could show you, it would be an interstate at midnight, power line after power line, field after field, tobacco, cotton, grass. There was so much grass. I knew where I was before I opened my eyes. Thank you.